Good afternoon, everybody. It's Friday. It's time yet again for another shop update. Let's get rolling with it. It has been a hot week. Sit back, relax. Hopefully you're in the cool air conditioning if you're someplace that's hot. And get yourself a nice beverage, tasty snack. Let's talk about some cars, shall we? Anyway, this week has been busy, but there's not a lot to talk about when it comes to the variety of automobiles that we've worked on. Hasn't been a lot of variety. We've kind of been focused on one car this week. That's going to change for next week, but I'll get into that in a little bit. Let's get started here. First one is the green Triumph here. I didn't do any wrenching on this. Our buddy came by. If you watched last week's video, you know that we figured out what the fault was. We decided to give the guy who's another mechanic at another shop that we're friends with, decided to give him the benefit of the doubt and say, hey, you want to come over here and fix your mistake before we move forward. He finally got a chance to come over. He straightened up the carburetors. The manifold is now properly mounted to the engine, so there isn't a giant air leak. And we did hear it run for just a few seconds, which is great to know. When we heard it run, we noticed that it was out of time, number one. And then number two, we knew that it was running poorly on the poor carburetors. So we've got to go through carburation and timing with this car before it can be sent home, which is what he's asked us to do. So carburetor tuning, timing, and he's got some overdrive work here in the inside. There's some wiring that he wants us to verify to be correct and then test to see if the overdrive actually functions. So we'll be driving a noseless green TR3 around, and I'm hoping that I'm going to knock this out at the beginning of next week, okay? So I'm hoping to get this squared away and out the door and gone next week. That's my plan. The other big thing, like, you know, we didn't wrench on the TR3, but it got some progress made on it. What we did, Christian and I did do this week, was a lot of work on the Lagonda LG6 project, okay? Now, like I said, we have a deadline, huge deadline on that one, a big one, and we want to hit that. We want to hit it hard. We want to get it done, but we don't want to let other projects fall by the wayside, okay? So there's going to be some hopping around on some of these cars, but we're always going to have a pretty big update on the Lagonda project. Every week there will be something that I have to tell you about that LG6 Lagonda. But we'll be bouncing between the MGA project, which is on the cover here, the other TR3 that's in the house right now. We're going to call it the cream yellow TR3. It's not that color yet, but it's going to go that color. And then the green Healey, which is underneath the cover here. We're going to be bouncing between those projects. What we did on the LG6 this week, if you see here, these stands behind me, these carts, filled with bits and pieces, parts. These are all exploded parts for the LG6. This is why I should be shooting some B-roll, because this is big, you know, nice stuff to kind of visually see while I'm giving you these updates. We've got our generator here that's entirely blown apart. There's a little bit of wiring work I got to do on it, but everything's kind of been cleaned up. It's ready to go back together. I do need to source a couple of roller bearings for it. That's right, this generator has nice little sets of roller bearings in it. It's a very heavy-duty generator for an old car. I do need to source some new roller bearings. If I can't source them, the bearings that were in it are actually not horrible, but it's kind of one of those that while you're in there, if you can get a new one, get a new one. I've blown the shocks. These are the rear shock absorbers. They're a lever type, or knee action shock is what they're sometimes referred to as. These are made by Armstrong, really common company that makes these kinds of shocks. We were going to send those out, and this is kind of a running theme with this car in general. We're going to send this out, but the guy who does these is like, yeah, it's going to be 4 months before I can get them done. Okay, well, that's past the deadline. Like, we can't, no. So we actually took them apart, cleaned them up a little bit on the inside, checked the valves and everything. Everything looks really, really good. They actually functioned all right. They were a little bit low on oil, so we're going to make sure that that they're topped up when we put them back together. We've cleaned out the valves, cleaned out the insides. We're going to paint up the arms black like they were, we should have those back on the car here pretty soon. This cart here has got the heater assembly. I forget where the heater was made. It's not a Smith's heater, which is common to most British cars. They use a Smith's heater. This is a Delaney galley heater. That's the emblem there. Kind of nice little Art Deco-y piece. It's not the first one of this type of heater that I've done. It's maybe the second Delaney galley heater that I've done. I just wrinkle finished the housing today. There's a few little small parts that need to be cleaned up. Over here, this shiny piece of coppery bronze here. This is actually the thermostat housing for the Lagonda project. It's coming along very nicely. On this cart, we have the original Rotex starter assembly, or Rotax, however you want to say that. This is the original starter that we pulled off the car. It may not be original to the car, but it is the original starter we pulled off the car. It did function. It was a little noisy. There's a piece here that's not quite doing anything. I'm not sure why it even exists there. The owner has a new, it's rebuilt Lucas starter for the car. This is his backup. We are probably going to do this up and restore it and rebuild it. However, it's not a top priority thing because he has a rebuilt starter already. The carburetors, which are right here, these beautiful SU carburetors, these wine bottle style SU carburetors. These are big boys. These are the big guys. I think these are 1 7/8, something like that. Maybe 1 3/4, 1 7/8, somewhere in there. We were going to be shipping some of this stuff out to have it rebuilt. And like I said, it was a running theme. Every time we would call up somebody and say, hey, this is the rebuilder. This is the guy who rebuilds, lever arm shocks. This is the guy who rebuilds generators and starters. This is the guy who rebuilds carburetors. Every time we talked to one of these people, they would say, yeah, we're 4 or 5 months out. 4 or 5 months out. There's no way we can get to you. No way we can get to you. Now, normally we do that stuff in-house. And the only reason why we were going to send any of this out was to expedite the process of this car. And now it's looking like we just have to do it all in-house still, which is fine. It just cuts into the time that we need to spend on other customer cars and on the Lagonda project itself, kind of putting it all back together and getting it ready to go. The carburetors are no different. We were going to send these out to Joe Curto. Joe Curto is very backlogged. He usually is. He's a pretty busy guy. He is kind of the SU carburetor guy here in the United States. Highly recommend him. We usually don't send out whole carburetor assemblies to him to get rebuilt. We usually do those in-house, like I said. But we do order parts from him. He has really good seal kits and really good parts kits, and I highly recommend him. If you're doing your own carburetors, order up your seals and parts kits from him. They're excellent. He's a little gruff to talk to. Okay, he's a New Yorker through and through, all right? He's there. He's from Queens or the Bronx or something. I don't know. But he's a tough guy. He's very short. He gets to the point very quickly. It's just, if you're not used to New York people, that's just how they are. So it's just how they are. You just got to take it. Take it with a grain of salt. They're not the kind, happy-go-lucky Midwesterners like myself, okay? They're kind in a different way. Anyway, one of the things that was holding up Joe with this particular set of carburetors is that these are originally, and I'll try and pick them up here because they're heavy. These are originally, as you can see, they're originally black-bodied carburetor, enamel black body. Now, the actual carburetor body is a bronze casting. However, they would have been enameled black from the factory. Now, not just the body of the carburetor, but the dash pot up here would have been black, and the float chamber would have been black as well. And we kind of wanted to bring it back to that original look. And when we told Joe this, he said, oh man, you're just adding more time to this. He doesn't do that in-house very often. The guy he used to send them out to doesn't do it anymore. So it's like he was, we talked with Joe and we said, well, we can paint them. And it was like, okay, we're going to ship them to New York, have him take them apart, start going through them. He's going to ship the parts back that need to be black. We're going to paint them black, then ship them back to him so he can put them together. That sounds like a lot of time and a lot of money in shipping. And in all honesty, as much as I know Joe would knock these out of the park, I think in this case, we're going to have to do these in-house still. So we'll order up our parts from Joe. There's a few things we can't get from him. These older style SUs have a very, very large float chamber, which requires a very special float. and we want to use a newer style. There's a newer style. The original floats inside there are made out of brass that's soldered together, and they're good. However, sometimes they can be affected by ethanol fuels that we have in all of our fuels here in the United States. So, or in most of our fuels here in the United States. Most gas stations use an ethanol fuel-based fuel. So, one of the big ones is that they make a float that is ethanol resistant. It's actually made out of a modern type of plastic, and it's really, really good. They also don't sink. It's really common for the brass ones to get a little hole in them. They fill with fuel, and they sink to the bottom, and then the car doesn't run right, and so on and so forth. So we are going to get the new floats. Those are going to come from Berlin Fuels over in the UK, along with a couple of other pieces that Joe doesn't carry. So other than that, we're on our way. We're moving along with it. We've got a lot to do on this old girl. As you can see, the firewall has not really progressed that much. I did do a couple of things with some firewall parts this week, which I'll show you here in a second. But we've got some trim pieces we need to make for around the firewall assembly here. And we have some more things that need to go onto the firewall, but we have to figure out where we want to put those and make sure that they don't get in the way of the engine. There's actually not like kind of a set guideline for where stuff goes, especially when you're kind of making your own firewall. There's some things like this is the air filter. It goes here. That's where it goes. But the fuel pumps originally didn't go right here on this car. They actually went further back in a cubby box back here, but we've changed some things up. Mainly to help out the usability of the automobile and kind of just to lay it out a little bit smarter. I keep saying this, but I honestly think that when Lagonda bodied this car, because this is bodied by Lagonda as well as being the chassis made by Lagonda, which isn't always the case with pre-World War II cars. So, but I always kind of thought that Lagonda none of the people there may have owned a ruler. There's a lot of bolt holes that are like, you could have made this symmetrical. You could have put this hole in the same side on both sides, but you were like, screw it, put the hole there. There's a lot of that. So when we redid the firewall, we kind of re-engineered a couple of things to make a little bit more sense, and kind of to keep engine bay with engine bay and keep, the sound and heat and all of the smells here and not in the cabin. That was a big one for the owner. He did not like how much stuff, heat and smell and all that stuff that got into the cabin while they were driving. He said they cooked their feet. They just burned their feet up. So we re-engineered this firewall to do better than Lagonda was doing. But what that means is some stuff kind of gets moved around. I wanted to put the fuel pumps here and not in a cubby box, back here. A lot of the stuff so far is kind of where it was originally, but we're kind of moving some stuff around here. Okay, so part of sealing up the firewall from the interior meant I had to make a couple of wedge pieces for down here. There's a gap right here along this piece right here that air goes right into there, and there's nothing that seals it against the hood, so it's just a big air hole that lets hot air into. So I actually made up two filler pieces, and I just finished them, just stained and satin. Polyed them this week. These are the filler blocks that go down into that wedge spot down there and kind of class it up, kind of make it look a little bit nice. Here we do woodworking here. I wouldn't say that we're master craftsmen in the wood arts, but we can get by. The color of that part was picked for a specific reason. It's going to be a little bit hard to see, but the dashboard is a very similar color. We try to match some of the woods. Kind of up in the air about whether or not we should make it this kind of dark brown color, or whether or not we should leave it the kind of birch or pine. I think that's birch ply, but kind of leave it this birchy, piney, white wood color. It was a debate, and in all honesty, I think it's going to look a lot classier with a little bit darker, like that darker wood on it. We're going to do the same stain, which is oddly enough, I think it's called American Walnut. We're going to do that same stain on these wood gap filler pieces here that are behind these aluminum strips, which Christian was happily filing these aluminum pieces to fit over the past couple of weeks. So we'll get some stain on these pieces here too and seal those up. There is, however, a rubber seal that goes over top of this, so you may not see a lot of this wood, which is a pro and a con. You know, I like to make things nice, even if you're not going to see them, because I feel like I saw it, and so if I saw it, it needs to look nice. If the owner never sees it, that's not a big deal. I saw it. And when the owner sees it, if he ever gets to see it, the owner ever takes it apart and he sees it, he's going to be like, wow, it's even nice under the thing. So many shops don't do that. They just don't. It's all about lipstick on a pig with a lot of shops. So not throwing a lot of people under the bus. I'm just saying, like, sometimes people think restoration means just make it polish the turd, but it's still a turd kind of thing. Like this, we don't want that. We don't want that. We want this to be nice through and through. And everything we touch, we're going to make nice through and through. Now, this week was us working on this Lagonda predominantly. Next week, like I said, I'm going to bounce over to that green TR3 in the other room over there, lurking in the back of the shot here. I'm going to bounce to that thing and kind of get it squared away and done and out the door, hopefully. In the same time, or at least sometime next week, one of us, either Christian or myself, is going to bounce back onto the Defender 90 project. We also want to get this one squared away and done and out the door. We are actually not taking in any work right now. Okay, we are not taking in any work. We cannot handle any more work. We have huge deadlines on multiple cars, whether they were set by the owner or set by us, but we've got these big deadlines. We want to get them squared away. We want to get things finished and out the door and completed. So D90 will get some progress hopefully next week. TR3 will definitely, the green TR3, will definitely get some progress and get out the door hopefully next week. And then we'll be back on our bouncing between the three amigos over here, the A, TR3, Healey, and the big old LG6. Once we get our balls rolling real smooth with that, this will fly by, as will the other three cars. You'll actually see progress on a lot of this stuff happen pretty quickly. So that'll be a great thing. Other than that, that's all I got. That's it. That's it for this week. I will talk to you all next week. I hope you have a lovely weekend. And, yeah, have a lovely week. I'll see you later. Bye. Thanks.